Rolling your ankle in the backcountry is a recipe for disaster. So if that's something you want to avoid, stay tuned. I'm Chris Gonzalez, owner of the Movement Training Company, where it is my job to help you prepare your body to adventure forever. In this video, we're going to go over 6 exercises designed by former USA track and field instructor, Dr. Russ Ebbets. Over the past 10 years, I've had the opportunity to share these exercises with thousands of people just like you. And in this video, I'll also share with you the proper progression for anyone of any experience level to get to the full version of each of these exercises. We'll also cover some of the whats and whys behind why you should train outside of proper alignment in order to build stronger, more resilient ankles. Now, before we dive in, I want to mention all of these things, as well as the fact that this type of improper alignment training needs to be done gradually. In the wise words of early 2000 hardcore band Circa Survive, the difference between medicine and poison is dosage. So it's very important that you go gradually to give your tissues time to adapt. All right, let's dive in. The first exercise we're going to look at targets ankle inversion. So we're going to roll onto the outside of our foot and just put a little bit of weight onto that outside edge. Now you may be asking yourself, why in the world would I do this intentionally? This is a position that I avoid like the plague when I'm out on the trails because it's where so many ankle sprains happen. Yes, this is a position where lots of ankle sprains occur. And part of that reason is because anatomically it's a very vulnerable position. But the other part of that is the fact that we never spend any time here. The SAID principle, which stands for Specific Adaptation to Impose Demand, tells us that when we spend time in a particular position, our tissues adapt to being better and stronger in that position. So, by getting ourselves accustomed to being in this ankle inversion position, not only does our nervous system get used to there so it doesn't treat it like the same threat, but also the tissues surrounding the ankle joint become more resilient and better able to support us in this position. So, if you want to make a position less hazardous, gently start spending time in that position. And that's how we begin to adapt the tissue to be more resilient in ankle inversion. So it's best to start with rocking about 5 times on each side. I'm not going to walk you through all of these. I'm just going to teach you them, and then you can do it on your own time at your own pace. It's very important that you listen to your body as you're doing this, because again, the difference between medicine and poison is dosage. We want to gently introduce these different ranges of motion, adding very light levels of load to it so our tissue has time to adapt. If we overdo it, well, we push ourselves all the way into injury. If we put light input, our body has time to adapt and therefore expand its capacity more and more over time. For the second variation of this exercise, we're going to rock onto the outside edge of our ankle, and we're going to put a little bit of weight on that edge just like we did when we were rocking back and forth. Only now, we're going to be pushing the side of our foot into the ground to engage the long tissues on the side of the ankle to resist the weight we're pushing. So it's an active contraction. It's almost like you're trying to flip your foot the opposite way, but we're doing it isometrically, meaning there's no actual motion. So our weight is shifted over, we're pushing that outside edge of the ankle down to engage the tissue on the outside. We'll do that for just about 5 seconds because again, we want to gently and gradually work our way to build up more pressure over time. And we'll repeat that about 5 times on each side. And if 5 times is too much, feel free to back it up to just 1 time or move back to the previous version of the exercise. For the final variation of this exercise, we're going to walk on the outside edges of our feet. And again, this is only after you've built your way up over time. And we're talking weeks and months, not days and weeks. So go slowly, make sure you respect your body and wherever it is. All right, on the outside edges of your feet, you can either walk in place on a soft surface, or even better, you can actually take steps. You can go out on a safe grassy area in a long carpeted hallway or whatever you have available. Notice how I'm taking small, soft steps. I'm not stomping down on the outside edges of my feet. I'm walking very slowly and in a controlled manner. So you want to build up to taking about 100 steps, but again, you have to do this very gradually. So start with just 10 to 15 steps, see how your tissue responds, and go from there. Now, it's very important for me to mention, if you have a connective tissue disorder like EDS or a long history of ankle sprains or ligament damage, then please, please, please only do this style of training under the direct supervision of someone like me or another trained professional. Our second exercise is going to be targeting ankle aversion, so rolling onto the inside of your foot. Now this one can feel a little bit awkward because there's not as much range of motion anatomically when you roll on the inside. So practice your rocks rolling in, and you can even isometrically contract your inner thigh muscles as if you were dragging this way in order to put more load on the ankle in this position. Or you can bend over and put a bit more load there, but that can be kind of uncomfortable on the inside of the knee. So we'll rock back and forth, starting with about 5 reps on each side. Alright, so once you get used to the rocking position, which is our first version, we're going to go on to our isometric loading position. So we'll go right back in, and now we really want to engage that inner thigh muscle on the targeted side to put more load in that tissue. And then your ankle's going to respond by trying to scoop under. But again, there's no actual motion because it's an isometric contraction. You'll do that for 5 seconds on each side 5 times. And I'll show you this side as well so you can get a different angle. We'll rock over. Inner thigh is engaging to add load. The ankle is responding by rotating back and engaging the long tissue on the inside of the ankle. And the last version will be walking. Now this one is a bit more difficult to do in place. It's better to get some actual motion. And you also need to take note that your knees are comfortable throughout this. Because this does put a decent amount of pressure on the inside of the knee, and while helping the ankle, we of course don't want to cause any knee issues. But just like working the ankle out of alignment, working the knee out of alignment in this position is beneficial when done very slowly and very gradually. If this is too intense though, you can always go back to previous versions. As you can see, this one is a bit more of a waddle, a bit more awkward, so as always, take your time and progress slowly. In the next variation, we're going to stand with our feet externally rotated. Now, we're going to do both sides at the same time for this, but there are 2 different rocks that we're going to do. First, you'll bend and let your knees track directly over your toes, so they're going out sideways. So we'll do 5 of those. And the second variation, if your knees are up for it, is going to be reaching your knees straight forward. So we're folding in on our feet a little bit. Now again, if this is too much pressure on your knees, you can stick with the other variation. But ideally, you'll do both and slowly build them up over time. Next, we'll do our isometric contractions. For this version, we're going to target one side at a time. So you'll reach your knee over your toes, bending the ankle. Now you're going to push your foot down like you're pushing a gas pedal to push up against the stretch that you're currently engaging in. So in this position, you're stretching a bit of the calf, specifically the soleus, because our knee is bent. So you're engaging that to push back down and fight against it. We'll hold that for our usual 5 seconds, repeat 5 times. We'll repeat that on the opposite side, leaning over, contracting for 5 seconds, and of course, over time, as you practice this more and more, that 5 seconds can turn into 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, and so on. Now for the second isometric version, we're going to do them both at the same time, because when we go over like this, it's kind of awkward and difficult to target just one side. So we'll lean forward, pushing the knees straight forward, so we're rolling onto the insides of our feet. We're going to actively engage all of that tissue that feels like it's being stretched to push back against that stretch. We hold for 5, come back out, and repeat 5 times. Once you're comfortable with that variation, we'll move on to our walking position. So again, we're externally rotated, walking kind of a la Charlie Chaplin or a penguin if you prefer. And slowly build up your steps over time. If you're practicing these exercises out in a park, get used to the strange looks because they always come. All right, we're halfway through. Now, if you've been finding this information useful so far, please hit that thumbs up button and that subscribe button. It really helps the channel, but more importantly, it helps you to continue to get information like this to help you prepare your body to adventure forever. All right, let's dive into the fourth version. We're going to turn our feet into internal rotation now. And so just like our external rotation, there are two lean variations. The first one, we're going to lean and let our knees track over our feet, so they're going to come forward in a knocked-kneed position. We'll do our 5 reps here and get comfortable with this. Next, we can track straight forward. You'll notice the range of motion is pretty limited initially. We don't want to overdo it just like all of our others. But now our knees are tracking straight forward instead of tracking in like the last version. For the next variation, we of course have our isometrics. So we're going to bring both knees straight in. We're going to push them forward until we feel those calves working. And then we're going to push down like we're pushing the gas pedal in our car to engage those calves and all that tissue that we're stretching. You'll hold that for 5 seconds, slowly come out, and repeat 5 times. The next variation, we're going to go straight forward, and we're going to engage that tissue that we feel stretching, hold for 5 seconds, and come out of that. Now in this one especially, if you feel discomfort on this closing area of the ankle, then you want to go ahead and back off it and skip that variation until you can work with me or another trained professional to target what's going on there. Last but not least, we have our walking variation. So toes are turned in, kind of like you're walking pigeon-toed, and we take our steps. Again, they're very small, controlled steps. We're not trying to win a race here. We're just trying to introduce some different ranges of motion to our tissue. Our next exercise is pretty straightforward initially. We're just going to lean into some calf raises. Nice and gentle, nothing intense. We're just doing a few here to introduce this motion to our ankles. So the first version again is just our rock. The second version, we're going to go into our calf raise, and you're going to actively contract your calves really, really hard. We're not just standing up here and hanging out. We want to intentionally put some extra work in that tissue. So we hold and we squeeze, squeeze, squeeze for 5 seconds, slowly come down, go right back up and repeat. The last variation will be walking on our toes. Now this can be done walking forward on your toes for the first version, which is pretty straightforward. And for the second version, and the more important version, we'll be walking backwards. Now, why in the world are we doing this? This seems like a pretty normal alignment thing, so it's kind of different than some of the other exercises. Well, this gets us into a conversation about building proprioceptive awareness. So our proprioception is our idea of where our body is in space. And a lot of our sensors in our feet become fairly dormant because we just don't use them very often. We're not running through the woods barefoot hunting, or at least most of us aren't. So by adding these different positions, all of these help to build better neural pathways from the brain all the way down so our body can learn to adapt no matter what strange position we may be in. It also, of course, does work on strengthening the calves and with some balance as well, but the biggest thing here is going to be building that proprioceptive awareness. All right, on to our final exercise. We're going to raise our foot up toward our shin in what we call dorsiflexion, so we're on our heel. Then we'll rock our weight over so all that weight is going into the heel. Now this is one especially you want to be on a soft surface, and you want to respect any pain or discomfort in your calcaneus, your heel bone, and you want to back off accordingly because of course you don't want to risk bruising that. Especially when we get to the walking variation, You make sure you're on a soft surface, and this one can even be done in shoes if you need to. For the isometric version, we're going to do the same thing. We'll lift up, we'll shift over, and this time we're going to contract the shin as hard as we can to really engage that as we're loading down below. Now in both this exercise and the calf exercise, you can place something under the raised portion, so in this case underneath the ball of the foot, and then you can contract in the opposite direction if you want, so that you're targeting the long stuff instead of the short stuff. But that's up to you if you want to add a little bit of complexity to your exercise. Of course, hold for 5 seconds initially, repeat 5 times on both sides. Lastly, we have our walking on our heels. Again, make sure you're on a soft, comfortable surface. You're stepping gently, and you're not falling hard forward because that will be rather uncomfortable on the bone itself. You'll really feel this in your shins in a way you probably have never felt your shins before, and it also is great for building the balance and most importantly the proprioceptive awareness. Alright, and those are our 6 ankle exercises and all of their variations. Remember, take this slowly, take it gradually, do it one day, take 2 to 3 days off, and then repeat it, and depending on how your body responds, you can up that frequency, but always take at least 1 day break in between. Again, listen to your body and to how it responds. This should not be painful or uncomfortable. It should be a gradual introduction to these new loads in your tissue so that it can adapt in a positive way. If you overdo it, it's a negative thing. If you introduce it slowly and gradually, it's a positive thing. The power is in your hands, and it will soon be in your ankles as well. If you want to learn more about this style of training, check out my Adventure Forever program. It's 6 weeks of online coursework as well as one-on-one virtual sessions with me so that I can customize each and every component specifically to you, your body, and your goals. You can find the link down in the description, and I hope to meet you face to face soon. Thank you so much for watching this video. Again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in future videos or out on the trail.